man. Some things that Kevin Stefanski is saying and the way he's going about things, some things are just not adding up. And Ryan Clark of ESPN basically exposed Kevin Stefanski this morning on Get Up. He had a very interesting take on Kevin Stefanski's motive. Also, this is all surrounded around naming Joe Flacco QB1.
The Cleveland Browns are on the verge of a disaster, one that no one saw coming. For weeks, fans have been whispering about the growing tension between head coach Kevin Stefanski and the team's future star quarterback, Shedeur Sanders. At first, it seemed like just another typical offseason story. But then, something changed. Ryan Clark, former NFL player and ESPN analyst, dropped a bombshell that no one could ignore. Live on national TV, Clark didn't dance around the issue. He flat out exposed what Browns fans had suspected all along. Stefanski never wanted Shedeur Sanders, not as a starter, not as a backup, and certainly not as the future of the franchise. As soon as those words left Clark's mouth, the entire NFL world went into a frenzy. Internet exploded. Fans took to social media to demand answers.
It's extremely obvious that Kevin Stefanski doesn't mess with Shedeur Sanders the way the outside public believes that he should. When you think about this process, it feels that Kevin Stefanski wasn't ready to draft Shedeur Sanders, and then upon drafting him, he didn't put a plan in place to handle the person. You have to understand with Shedeur Sanders is going to come more media attention, more scrutiny. He's going to be treated unlike anything else in that locker room or anything else we see in the league based on his position. He won't be treated like a backup. He won't be treated like a third stringer. He won't be treated like a practice squad guy. You're going to have to answer questions about him, which is why you need answers prepared.
How could the Browns ignore a quarterback with Shedeur's potential? A player who walked into that locker room with a confidence and talent that could change everything for the team. And yet, Stefanski remained silent. No praise, no recognition. Just vague statements about evaluating in time, and he's one of many. It was a clear message. The coach was trying to bury the talent he never wanted in the first place. But why? What exactly is going on behind the scenes in Cleveland? Is this really about football, or is it about something far more personal? What does Stefanski have to lose by giving Shedeur a chance? And more importantly, how long can he keep up the act before the entire world realizes the Browns may already have their future quarterback sitting right in front of them? From the very beginning, it was clear Kevin Stefanski wasn't prepared for Shedeur Sanders.
Yesterday, he wouldn't even go so far as, and I understand your point about maybe it's not a great thing to be the number 2 on the depth chart. Okay, we'll get into that. I understand what you're talking about, but there's just a principle involved here where at least you acknowledge that by default, just by default, Flacco is now gone, Kenny Pickett's now gone, just by default, Shedeur moved up a slot.
While the Browns were busy making headlines with their high-profile draft pick, the coach was nowhere near as excited as the fans or media. In fact, it almost seemed like he was forced into it. It wasn't the kind of enthusiastic welcome you expect for a player with that much potential. Instead, it felt like a reluctant decision, one that lacked a true plan or vision. Stefanski never seemed ready to handle the spotlight that would inevitably follow Shedeur's arrival. Shedeur Sanders wasn't just another quarterback on a practice squad. His name alone brought media attention, fan frenzy, and the kind of pressure few rookies face. Yet when he walked through the Browns facility doors, it was as if he wasn't even seen. No special announcement, no media circus, just another player trying to earn his spot, despite the fact that his talent screamed future star. Stefanski, however, wasn't ready for that kind of attention. It wasn't just about football anymore.
Dylan Gabriel was bad. Kevin Stefanski was bad. The receivers were bad. Hospital balls, drop balls, super sacks, interceptions dropped. It was just bad all the way around.
The moment Shedeur signed with the team, the spotlight shifted and Kevin seemed to pull back. There was no acknowledgement of Shedeur's obvious potential. No praise for the arm strength, the poise under pressure, or the confidence of someone far beyond his years. Instead, Stefanski's cold response was almost calculated. He didn't speak highly of Shedeur. He didn't give fans or the media any reassurance that the rookie was someone to watch. In fact, his comments were vague at best. "We'll evaluate in time, and he's one of many." One of many? That's not how you speak about a player who can change the course of a franchise. The question now becomes, was Stefanski prepared for what came with Shedeur Sanders? Or was he simply trying to bury him before he even had a chance to shine? And then came the moment that shook everything to its core. Ryan Clark, live on national TV, dropped a truth bomb that couldn't be ignored. It wasn't speculation.
That should be it in terms of seeing a dual threat at the quarterback position with extreme athleticism being questioned as to whether or not they could play the quarterback position. What's the problem? I see no problem. So I'm pretty ticked off that Ryan Clark deleted his tweet, according to the reports. Because would you take it down for?
It wasn't a vague hint. It was a statement of fact that sent shockwaves through the NFL world. On ESPN's Get Up, Clark didn't hold back. He leaned into the camera and said exactly what every Browns fan had been quietly whispering for weeks. Kevin Stefanski never wanted Shedeur Sanders. Not as a starter, not as a backup, not even as a name worth mentioning. The room fell silent. It wasn't just the power of the words, but the boldness of the delivery. Ryan Clark wasn't beating around the bush. He was exposing something fans had only been speculating about. Stefanski's silence wasn't just indifference. It was a calculated move. Clark connected the dots that had been floating in the background. The lack of praise, the strange reluctance to give Shedeur any real opportunity, the way the Browns seemed to want to bury his talent rather than unleash it. And when Clark said it, when he put those words out into the world, the entire internet exploded. Social media immediately lit up. The fans were furious, the media was in a frenzy, and the Browns were put on blast. How could a team with so much potential, especially at the quarterback position, be actively suppressing a talent like Shedeur Sanders? The questions piled up, and they weren't going away. Was this really about football, or was it personal? Was Stefanski's resistance to Shedeur's potential a sign of something deeper? Something about control? About power? About fear? Clark's words didn't just raise eyebrows. They ignited a firestorm. In that moment, the entire NFL began to pay attention, and the Browns were left answering questions they weren't prepared for. Ryan Clark didn't just stir the pot. He flipped the table, and now Cleveland was on the defensive. Despite all the buzz surrounding Shedeur Sanders, there was one glaring thing missing from the equation: any recognition from Kevin Stefanski. While the fans, the media, and even the locker room were buzzing about Shedeur's potential, Stefanski remained eerily silent. And it wasn't just a quiet approval. It was an outright refusal to acknowledge the talent that was right in front of him. Every time Shedeur made a spectacular play in practice, every time he showcased that elite quarterback potential, Stefanski stayed quiet. No praise, no, "this kid's got it." No mention of the raw talent that was clearly standing out in front of him. Instead, fans were met with robotic comments like, "We'll evaluate in time," or "He's one of many." One of many? It was a direct slap to the face of a quarterback who had proven time and time again that he wasn't just another one of many. He was the one. This wasn't just a case of a coach playing it safe. There was something deliberate about it. When you're in a position like Stefanski's, with the future of your team on the line, you don't just ignore a talent like Shedeur. You don't bury someone who has the potential to change the trajectory of your franchise. You acknowledge it, You build around it, you nurture it. But Stefanski didn't. He did the exact opposite. He kept Shedeur at arm's length, refusing to even publicly commit to the idea that the rookie had a future with the team. The lack of praise wasn't just about Shedeur. This was about control. Stefanski had built his system around quiet loyalty, around players who fit into his vision without causing a stir. But Shedeur, with his swagger, his confidence, and his undeniable skill, was the opposite of everything Stefanski had created. And that, it seemed, was the real issue. Not Shedeur's talent, but the fact that his presence threatened the coach's carefully constructed system. Kevin Stefanski's silence wasn't just about football. It was a statement. A carefully calculated move designed to control a situation that was quickly spiraling out of his grasp. While the media, the fans, and even the locker room were all buzzing about Shedeur Sanders' potential, Stefanski seemed to shrink into the shadows, avoiding any mention of his rookie quarterback. And that silence, it was deliberate, it was strategic, and it was telling. Shedeur Sanders had arrived with the kind of confidence that could ignite a locker room. The media loved him. Fans adored him. His skill set was undeniable. And yet, when it came to Stefanski's press conferences, it was as if Shedeur didn't exist. Every time he was asked about his rookie quarterback, Stefanski would respond with cold, detached answers. "We'll evaluate in time," he would say. Or, "He's one of many." But the truth was, Shedeur wasn't one of many. He was the one who could change everything for the Browns. But Stefanski didn't want that kind of change, not in his system. Why the silence? It wasn't about development. It was about control. Stefanski, by his own admission, had built a team around predictability, around safe decisions, and players who would toe the line. Shedeur, with his swagger, his undeniable skill, and his natural leadership, represented everything Stefanski wasn't ready for. He was the future, and Stefanski wasn't prepared to deal with that future. At least, not on his terms. He wasn't ready for a quarterback who would demand attention, who would command a locker room and a fan base. He wasn't ready for a player who could bring energy and personality into a space Stefanski had tried to keep sterile. Instead of giving Shedeur the spotlight he deserved, Stefanski buried him. He refused to acknowledge his talent, hoping the silence would keep the inevitable storm at bay. But that silence, it seemed, only made things worse. The more Stefanski tried to avoid the conversation, the louder it became. And now, the entire NFL was paying attention. Then came the moment that shattered the illusion, the one that exposed everything for what it really was, the updated quarterback depth chart. This wasn't just a minor oversight. It was the final piece in the puzzle. The Browns had made their decision, and it was clear. Shedeur Sanders wasn't even part of the conversation. The announcement was like a slap in the face to every fan who had supported Shedeur from the beginning. Joe Flacco, who hadn't seen meaningful action in years, was listed as QB1. Bailey Zappi, who had struggled with consistency, was named QB2. And Shedeur, not even mentioned, not even a whisper. The rookie, who had shown up in camp with a poise and talent that made even seasoned veterans take notice, was completely erased from the conversation. It was as if his name had never been spoken in that room at all. Fans were in shock. Social media exploded. In a matter of hours, #FreeShedeur and #StartShedeur became viral hashtags as the world rallied behind a quarterback who had been systematically ignored. The comparisons between Shedeur's perfect throws and Zappi's missed opportunities flooded Twitter. It wasn't even a debate. The evidence was right there. Shedeur was the better quarterback by far. The Browns tried to pass this off as part of the process, part of their evaluation, but no one was buying it. The team had drafted Shedeur to be the future, to lead them into a new era of football. But now, they were pretending like he didn't even exist. And that's when it became clear. This wasn't about football anymore. This wasn't about merit. This was about something deeper, something more personal. Shedeur's talent was undeniable. His performance in training camp and preseason games proved it. And yet, the Browns chose to bury him. They chose to pretend he wasn't the answer, even though all the signs pointed to him being exactly what the franchise needed. It wasn't a decision made for football. It was a decision made out of fear. When the Browns released that depth chart, it wasn't just a mistake. It was a declaration. A declaration that Shedeur Sanders, despite everything he had shown, was being buried. And as soon as those names were made public, the backlash was immediate, intense, and absolutely impossible to ignore. Fans didn't hold back. The reactions were swift and loud. Social media exploded with outrage. Clips of Shedeur effortlessly slinging perfect passes in training camp flooded Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. Shedeur making elite throws under pressure, while Bailey Zappi struggled to complete the simplest passes. The footage was undeniable. The comparison wasn't even close. It wasn't a debate. It was an indictment of Stefanski's decision-making, and the entire NFL was watching. Even analysts who had once praised Zappi's potential were now calling out the Browns for their blatant mismanagement of Shedeur. How is he not QB2 at least? They asked. How do you not even give him a chance? The narrative was shifting, and it was no longer about football. It was about how the Browns were failing to recognize talent in front of them. This wasn't just a missed opportunity. It was an outright rejection of a rising star. As the outrage continued to grow, a hashtag started trending. Hashtag Free Shedeur. What began as a fan movement quickly gained momentum, with former players and analysts joining in, calling for Shedeur to be given the chance he deserved. The sentiment was clear. Shedeur wasn't just a good quarterback. He was the quarterback who could take the Browns into the future. He was once a young, raw, and unstoppable force, full of fire and talent, trapped behind coaches and systems that didn't know how to handle him. Shedeur Sanders, in many ways, was the same. He wasn't just a quarterback with potential. He was a player who could change the game, just like Kobe did for basketball. Ryan Clark didn't just say that Shedeur was a talented rookie. He compared him to the kind of player who forces the game to change. He spoke about the raw ability to take over and make a mark. And the more Clark spoke about this comparison, the more it made sense. Shedeur, like young Kobe, didn't need time to grow into the spotlight. He was born for it. He didn't need to wait to prove his worth. His talent was already undeniable. He had the confidence, the poise, and the skill to lead. But just like Kobe, his biggest challenge was going to be the system built to hold him back. As Clark's words echoed through the media, the comparison became even more powerful. It wasn't just about Shedeur's football skills anymore. It was about his potential to be a game changer. And it was about the coach who couldn't see it. Kevin Stefanski wasn't just ignoring a quarterback. He was denying the very future of the team. And in doing so, he was making the same mistake that coaches had made with Kobe Bryant. And the league wasn't going to let him get away with it. The more Kevin Stefanski tried to bury Shedeur Sanders, the louder the support for the young quarterback grew. What started as whispers in the locker room quickly transformed into a full-blown movement, and the entire football world was watching. Fans, analysts, former players all began to rally behind Shedeur. What the Browns had hoped to keep quiet had now become the loudest conversation in football. In the locker room, it was impossible to ignore the growing admiration for Shedeur. His teammates saw what the coaches refused to acknowledge. A quarterback who wasn't just playing the game, but commanding it. Every time Shedeur stepped onto the field, he made an impression. Whether it was his calm under pressure, his accuracy in tight spots, or the way he commanded the offense like a seasoned veteran, Shedeur had proven time and time again that he belonged in the spotlight. And those around him couldn't help but notice. Veterans who had been skeptical of the rookie at first were now admitting that Shedeur had it. Players who had once quietly watched from the sidelines were now speaking up, asking why he wasn't getting more reps. "That kid's got it," they would say, quietly to each other when no coaches were around. Even reporters, who had initially brushed off Shedeur as just another draft pick, started taking notice. They were picking up on the small details: how he read defenses, how he moved the ball with ease, how he made plays under pressure, and they weren't the only ones. The entire locker room was shifting in his favor. But it wasn't just the players who were behind him. The fans were all in. Hashtag Free Shedeur was trending, and with every new clip of Shedeur making a throw that even the most seasoned quarterbacks would envy, the movement gained momentum. Analysts who had initially doubted him now spoke about his potential as if it were undeniable. The Browns had tried to keep Shedeur hidden, but instead they had sparked a nationwide conversation about why he wasn't starting, and why that was a huge mistake. Now, it wasn't just about talent, it was about justice. Fans weren't just rooting for a quarterback. They were rooting for the underdog, the kid who had earned his place but was being held back by a system too afraid to acknowledge him. As the weeks pass and the pressure mounts, the question becomes clearer. How long can Kevin Stefanski continue to suppress Shedeur Sanders? The Browns' handling of their young quarterback has escalated from a simple misstep to an outright power struggle. Every moment Shedeur remains sidelined adds fuel to the fire, and the heat is only intensifying. What started as a quiet whisper among fans has now turned into a national conversation, and it's no longer about football strategy. It's about the future of the franchise, the coach's credibility, and the undeniable talent of Shedeur Sanders. Stefanski's attempts to control the narrative by silencing Shedeur have only backfired. With each passing week, more players, more fans, and more analysts are waking up to the truth. Shedeur isn't just another quarterback. He's the quarterback the Browns need. He's ready now. He doesn't need to be developed. And yet Stefanski continues to ignore the inevitable. Every silence, every vague comment, every missed opportunity to praise Shedeur speaks volumes. It's no longer about football, it's about fear. Fear of the spotlight Shedeur brings. Fear of a quarterback who won't bow to the system. Fear of a rising star that threatens to outshine the very system Stefanski has built. The clock is ticking for Kevin Stefanski. He can't keep pretending that Shedeur isn't the future of this team. The public knows it. The locker room knows it. And most importantly, Shedeur knows it. The real question is, how long can Stefanski keep up this charade before he's forced to confront the truth? The Browns are in danger of losing not just a star quarterback, but the respect of their players and their fans if they continue to sideline a talent like Shedeur. And when Shedeur finally steps onto that field, whether in Cleveland or somewhere else, the NFL will remember who doubted him and who was brave enough to believe. The movement is already here. The storm is brewing, and when it hits, it won't just be about football. It will be about a coach who couldn't handle the future and a quarterback who refused to wait his turn.